And let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to another evening at Gŵyl Literature Festival. I hope you are all keeping well and enjoying the sun. So tonight I would like to introduce Josh. Josh and Ellen run Green Ink Bookshop.
Booksellers.
Booksellers, got it right first time. Josh and Ellen run Green Ink Booksellers, and it's a wonderful shop in Hay-on-Wye, and much more importantly, they are our official bookshop of the festival. So if you want to go and buy any of the books that we're talking about over this week, please do go to Green Ink Booksellers. They are wonderful. So I'd like to say hi, and do you want to talk a little bit about what you do at Green Ink?
Yeah, so I mean, in normal times the bookshop is open for business, and yeah, we set that up in October 2018, so it's quite recent for a bookshop in Hay. We're all secondhand most of the time, obviously for this this lovely festival. We are happy to order in any books that people want, but yeah, we started selling in Hay just online in 2015. We moved back from Australia where we were living, and we bought someone's stock who was retiring and started just selling online, with the idea that we wanted to have a bookshop again. We had one in Australia, but it took us 3 years to get from kind of idea to actually opening. So we opened about a year and a half ago. It was going very well, and then it wasn't. But so we will see what happens when we emerge from this this particular
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What is there any differences between like your experience in Australia running a bookshop and here? Is there anything in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest difference, the shop we had in Australia, which was secondhand as well, we didn't sell online at all. So we were, which is quite unusual these days. So we were quite lucky that we were in Melbourne, in a kind of nice leafy suburb near the university. Lots of different, it's a busy place, lots of different kind of types of readers. And it meant we had enough custom to not have to kind of sell online, which is, it's just a very, well, it's a different, a more old-fashioned kind of book selling and a different pace of book selling. So there's a lot more time to kind of enjoy the environment you're in and to talk to people about books, and potentially to read books while you're at the counter, which we don't get to do anymore. And because selling online, there's always something to do. I mean, you're fulfilling orders, or you're cataloging books, or you're kind of responding to inquiries, and it's, I mean, in a way it's more dynamic, but yeah, you don't get to kind of set your own pace in the same way. And then, sorry, yeah, just in terms of the types of books we sell, I mean, here we sell quite a lot of quite academic books, I guess. We sell a lot of philosophy. There we were maybe a bit more general, and sold obviously a lot of Australian books, which maybe no one would have heard of here, and definitely maybe wouldn't sell. But generally, I mean, a lot of the book selling is the same. I mean, the joy of buying secondhand books, of opening a box of books, of going out on a kind of house visit or something, it's the same thrill.
Yeah, absolutely. So since we're a translated book festival, we're going to talk a bit about some translated fiction. So what have you got for us? Okay,
so I have selected these 3 books, which are all Icelandic books in translation, which is there aren't that many Icelandic books in English, I don't think. And they're 3 that I particularly enjoyed, but also, I don't know, they have a particular flavour which I haven't come across in any other books. I mean, kind of Norwegian, Finnish, Swedish literature and translation, it's similar, but it doesn't quite have the same connection to kind of the sagas and mythology that Icelandic literature seems so steeped in. And per capita, I think Iceland publishes more books than any other country in the world. Yeah, it's an incredibly kind of literate country, and you know, I mean, 330,000 Icelanders, something like that. But yeah, an enormous amount of books are published. And yeah, so where should we start? I'm going to start with From the Mouth of the Whale by an author called Sjón, S-J-O-N. And this started my interest in Icelandic literature, so it's a good place to start. I went to see him speak at the Melbourne Writers' Festival when we were living in Australia. And I mean, he's the coolest man I think I've ever seen in real life. He is a guitarist and songwriter for Björk. So he's won an Oscar for Dance in the Dark. You know, he dresses like immaculately. He's just he speaks poetically as he writes, and yeah, I was a little bit in awe of him straight away. So this is his third novel that was translated into English. It's about a kind of Enlightenment figure in Iceland, in what is essentially an unenlightened country at the time, but a man of kind of science. And yeah, it's a really beautiful piece of writing, and I don't know, it started my love anyway.
That sounds so interesting. I've shamefully never read any Icelandic. I think the only interaction actually I do have here, Haida. Do you remember this coming out last year?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's about, if anyone doesn't know, it's called about a shepherd at the end of the world, a shepherdess at the end of the world, and she was huge last year. Everyone was really rating her work. So that's on my to read pile. Anyway, what's your second book for us?
Okay, so I will go for Halldór Laxness, World Light. Halldór Laxness is the only Icelandic author to have won the Nobel Prize for Literature. His most famous book is called Independent People, but this book and another one called The Fish Can Sing, which I couldn't find a copy of. I must have lent it to someone. but other two that I really love, and as I said, this connection of Icelandic literature to, you know, the sagas, to poetry, and poetry being such an important part of the kind of national psyche, is very much in evidence in this book. It is about a young man who's born in rural Iceland. He grows up in fairly poor setting, but he's convinced that he's going to be a great poet, that this is his destiny. And the book kind of follows him through his, I would go with, gently humorous endeavors, and sometimes not, to become so. But yeah, the book is incredibly poetic. And I mean, we're talking about literature in translation. You always wonder with literature in translation how much is, you know, how much of the real flavor you're getting. What are you missing? But I was listening to Carlo Rivoli, the Italian physicist, talking about his latest book, or all of his books, and he used a lovely phrase, which was not about what's lost in translation, but what's gained in translation, and how it's kind of like another part of the process, and actually it doesn't have to be this idea of something being taken away or removed, but it can be something being added and gained. And I thought that was, you know, very lovely. Obviously I don't speak Icelandic. It's apparently an incredibly difficult language to learn, but so I'm grateful for what is in translation. Who was this translated by? A lot of his work was translated by Magnus Magnusson, who used to present what was the show?
I can picture him so well.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, he was a man of many talents as well. But yeah, anything by Halldór Laxness is just, I've given his books to lots of people over the years, and absolutely no one has come back and said they didn't like it. They've all just fallen in love with it. And I think he is an exemplar of what a lot of Icelandic literature is like. Obviously, you know, like any other literature, it's not homogenous in any way, but I think it's a wonderful place to start anyway. And
is it literally in prose? Sorry, is it literally in verse, or is it in prose?
No. It's just prose. It's a novel, but how to describe it? There's a flow to it and a sense of I don't know. I can't really describe it any better than saying it's poetic in its sensibility. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that that each bit of language is poetic in itself, but that the whole feeling very much is. And there's this idea, like I said, this idea of the sagas and mythology, and there's a lot of that mentioned kind of as a background, this kind of idea of lineage and connection to great poets of the past, but also in terms of the kind of grandiose nature of someone's endeavour. So this boy who is just a boy, but is convinced he's going to be a great poet. Now, that is, there's something grandiose about his intention, but it's not ridiculous, although it is kind of comic. But yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's it. I googled Magnus Magnusson. I think it was Mastermind.
That's it. Yeah. Yes, I mean, Mastermind and translating a Nobel Prize winning author. You know, what more could you want?
I'd take it. Yeah, that sounds beautiful. I will absolutely be picking up that book. What and you have a third choice for us? Am I right?
Yeah. So this Heaven and Hell by John Kalman Stephenson, which is the first in a trilogy. I'm not sure if the third part is out yet. I don't have it. I've read the first two. I think it probably is by now, but I should check it out. But again, this is it follows a young boy who's born in a fishing village who is obsessed with literature and the idea of being literate, and reads Paradise Lost, and and I mean it's this one is set against, as they all are in some way, is set against the kind of harshness of the terrain. He right at the beginning of the book, they go out to sea in a fishing vessel in a storm, and well, it doesn't go brilliantly, but it's very much set against this kind of almost the it's not going to come out right, but yeah, it's inhospitable, the landscape, and it's these people are living hard lives, and in some way the literature, the poetry is a salvation from that. So yeah, I mean, it's quite a slim volume. On the front, the quote on the front from someone, the Irish Examiner, strangely enough, says, "An unusually intense reading experience," and I would not disagree with that. It was quite, I don't know, it's somewhere between harrowing and uplifting, but in a kind of spiritual way. It kind of like something that raises you above the kind of idea of the everyday, and yet what's being described is almost determinedly everyday. That's the best as I can put it. I mean, I think it's yes, it's a fine piece of writing.
That sounds amazing. No, I was just gonna say, the way you're describing it, I'm sure it's not. Is it at all comparable to The Old Man and the Sea? Like, just the way you're taught, like, sort of being at sea, uplifting and harrowing, like those things.
I mean, I suppose it is in some way, although this does kind of almost move away from the sea. There's that first bit could be, but yeah, I would say in setting, yes, and in terms of maybe the feeling of it, but in terms of the writing and the setting, not quite. I mean, I can't quite put my finger on it, but it couldn't be set anywhere else. It couldn't be. And I would say with all three novels, there's something, although they are similar in some ways. They are literate people looking for kind of in love with knowledge or beauty or poetry in this harsh environment, but they are there's a very unique perspective to all of them, and a kind of unique sensibility, which is what I've found that I quite enjoy with Icelandic literature. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've got a copy here. There's a book called Hotel Silence, which is by, I can't, her surname's Offersdottir, but I can't remember her first name. But she, I realise I haven't mentioned any female authors, so I'm going to mention her. And that book is, I saw her speak at the Hay Festival a few years ago, and she spoke really interestingly that she wanted to write about women, so she chose to write it from the point of view of a male character, and she wanted to write about peace, and so she set it in a war. And it was a really interesting idea that you explore what you're looking to explore, you explore through its antithesis almost, or its opposite. And yeah, she spoke really interestingly. And in terms of someone who, speaking about translation, she can speak at least 6 languages, and so was able to work closely with her English translator, her French translator, her Italian translator, I think maybe her German translator as well, and actually her grasp of those languages was good enough that, I mean, she could have translated them herself.
Yeah.
But she worked closely with her translators to kind of, as an extra act of creation, which is a bit like what I said about Carlo Rivoli, this idea of it being an additional step rather than a paring back.
She sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to check.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'm always in awe of it. Does seem like the dream relationship where the author isn't translating their own book but is still able to input and sort of still keep some of their vision in. Yeah,
I mean, I saw one of my favorite books, in fact, moving away from the Icelandic books, but just quickly, is Snow by Orhan Pamuk, the Turkish, another Nobel.
I'm a fan of him.
But I saw him speak about translation with Maureen Freely, who was his second translator into English. And he, initially, his books were being translated, and then his English got good enough that he could read his own books in translation, and he realised that they weren't quite right. And so he had them retranslated, but and he worked with Maureen Freely, and they had that kind of a working relationship. And I think some authors don't want that. They just want to it's done, and no author can, I mean, when you read on the back of a book translated into 42 languages, I mean, no author's going to be able to have that relationship with all those languages. But when it's possible, I think it can be quite interesting. And obviously someone like him, his English became good enough that he could kind of realize that the translation didn't do what he wanted it to do, and so he took an active role in the next translation.
That's really interesting to hear. Is there any other books that you'd like to plug before we wrap up?
Oh, hang on. Just see if I can. I'll see anything on the shelf. It's not there. It's upstairs in the other set of shelves. There's a book called Madame Herbert by Adam Thirlwell, and it's not a fiction, although he does write fiction, but it's a book about the history of the novel, really, although some people would argue it's the history of the European novel, but we won't get into that. But it's also about translation in quite a lot of detail, and it has a translated version of Nabokov's story, Mademoiselle O, at the end, which is quite interesting. And I mean, Nabokov's quite interesting because he obviously wrote in 3 different languages.
When the first time I read Lolita and realised that he'd written it in English, and it blew my mind. And then I'm actually going to be talking, either have or will have, depending on when this comes out, about Invitation to a Beheading, because I just love that book. And Nabokov said Lolita had a soft place in my heart, but I think Invitation to a Beheading is my best book. And but that one was written in Russian, and to have the fluency blows my mind.
I know, to have written, and he wrote in French as well. So I mean, I think he's a really interesting example. And I can't remember the story exactly, but it was a story of his that was translated out of French into English, and then translated back from English into French. And you know, the differences between the original text and the translated twice text is, you know, that's an interesting. But yeah, I mean, Adam Thirlwell's book deals with quite a lot of this problem of translation, but the kind of the idea of it, because he talks about obviously like Cervantes and but right through to kind of the Polish author Witold Gombrowicz, and you know, he kind of he deals with it in quite a very playful manner, but it's it's an interesting book to read for anyone interested in translation, definitely.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Josh. I really
it's a pleasure.
And thank you so much for being the official bookshop.
Yes, I would say that, you know, we won't have all the books listed on our website or anything like that, but we can order anything in. So it's kind of a matter of contacting us, and we'll get whatever's necessary. So thanks for putting this together. It's really great.
No, not at all. I actually just got a delivery from you the other day. They just arrived. They're just here.
There we go.
It's wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Bye everyone. Tune in tomorrow.